Well, there were some interesting nuggets when it does come to the Patriots offense. As we discussed a little bit earlier in the show, Trent Brown, of course, returning to the Patriots on a 2-year deal. Former Patriots fullback Jakob Johnson revealing he was told by the Pats he was no longer needed because they're cutting out the fullback position. And Bucs running back Leonard Fournette reportedly visited Foxborough today. He rushed for 812 yards and 8 touchdowns last season to go along with 69 receptions last year. We're going to bring Tom Giles into this conversation because Giles, I think like a lot of us, he has some questions for you guys that he needs answered.
Yeah, Greg, you just talked about, like, it became crystal clear what the Patriots' plan was going into the offseason as far as free agency. But I'm looking at this saying, what's the plan as far as their philosophy on offense? Because you let your fullback go. You let Shaq Mason, well, you trade Shaq Mason. You're bringing Leonard Fournette to maybe bring another running back. I don't understand. This was a team that relied so heavily on running the football. And now you're just going to kind of change things up the year that Josh McDaniels moves on to the Raiders. It just, I don't really understand. I would get it if they went out there and signed a stud wide receiver, but they didn't. So how are they going to move the ball?
Well, Giles, a couple things on that. Number one, the Patriots might be moving on from your traditional fullback. For a couple years now, they've been looking to get more athletic at the fullback position, sort of like a Kyle Juszczyk type of guy. They want to go to more of the 49ers Shanahan type of offense. That's why Dalton Keene was drafted. He hasn't been on the field yet. I'll still be surprised if we get to the end of training camp and they don't have a fullback because they like to leave themselves options. You don't need to spend for one. There's plenty of decent ones on the street. And so, but as far as the offensive line, with Trent Brown back, if he's on the field, Onwenu slides over to right guard probably. That just leaves you left guard. And, you have a guy like Yasir Duran, who you traded for last year. Justin Herron gives you flexibility there. The draft. So I don't think it's anything drastic right now. Yeah, you're going to need some guys to step up on the outside for them to get more dynamic. But, you never know what they might do looking to the future.
So, Phil, that might explain why they are getting rid of a fullback. But why do they keep adding running backs and not adding wide receivers? Like, are they just going to get those in the draft? Like, what's the plan there?
Well, they haven't added any running backs yet, but Leonard Fournette is somebody that I know the Patriots have been interested in for some time. He is viewed as an all-purpose back. First, second, third down. We know the number of passes he caught from Tom Brady last year, so maybe he's familiar with some Patriots concepts that Brady might have brought down to Tampa Bay. I think the other thing you have to consider is when you look at this, if they do end up adding Fournette, who makes a visit to the Patriots today, you might be moving on from another running back. And I look at Damien Harris as somebody who was a 2019 draft pick. He's going in the last year of his rookie contract. You have a young running back who plays essentially the exact same role in Ramondre Stevenson. And it worked out great between those two guys last year because you could mix and match and you could keep them both fresh. But again, Harris in the last year of his deal, you have a young player at the same position. Are you going to keep both for the foreseeable future? A lot of times it's those guys that are on their rookie deals in the last year of their rookie deals that become trade candidates for all teams across the league, including the Patriots. They just acquired Mack Wilson, who's in the last year of his rookie contract, from the Browns. So that would be something that I would look to potentially, Greg, is if they get Fournette, what ends up happening with Harris?
Phil, knock me over with a feather. Bill Belichick, it used to be by clockwork. We could say, all right, guys going into the last year of his rookie deal, they're going to make, give themselves options. Finally, they're doing it again. You have Isaiah Wynn at left tackle. 2-year deal for Trent Brown if it's a real 2-year deal. You have an option if you move on from Isaiah Wynn at any point in time. You bring Fournette in, Phil's exactly right. Damien Harris, there could be a trade waiting out there for them. They could deal him at the deadline. He goes into the last year of his deal this year. It leaves themselves options. Finally, they're doing it again after about 3 years of just, letting stuff go out the door and getting nothing for it.
I'll say this about the tackle real quick, though, because you talked about Trent Brown off the top of the show. I actually like the fact, Trenni, that they brought him back because it now means that hopefully we don't see the Patriots draft a right tackle in the first or second round when they have so many needs at linebacker, at wide receiver. I'd rather them get better at those positions than go out and get an offensive lineman, which they'll probably do anyway.
They're still taking a tackle, Giles, so settle down.
It's going to be terrible.
Yeah, what did you think, Bedard, of the Trent Brown contract?
It's fine. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't think it was vital. I think that, I'm disappointed that this probably tells us that the Yadi Kajus third-round pick a few years ago was another wasted pick for them since he's not capable. I think you could draft a guy. We've seen them do it with Nate Solder and Joe Tooney and Shaq Mason, guys who were drafted who came in and started right away. They could have done that. It gives them coverage. It's fine. I'm not overly excited about it. I don't think anything depended on Trent Brown, but it's nice to have him back, especially if it's at a decent number.
All right, Giles, we are going to give you a little break because we're going to talk about another notable player visiting Foxborough. It wasn't just Leonard Fournette. Our old friend Malcolm Butler trying out for the Patriots. This, according to Boston Globe's Ben Volin, Butler is looking to come out of retirement and could be a fit on the Patriots, who, of course, are thin at cornerback. He spent his first 4 seasons in New England, highlighted by his Super Bowl interception against the Seahawks. I, though, like to think, guys, that his tenure here was actually highlighted by the fact that he was crying during the national anthem in a Super Bowl against the Eagles, in which the Patriots secondary got absolutely torched. He never really played a game, and now suddenly he's back in Foxborough because they're so desperate at the cornerback position, Phil.
Yeah, they need guys. They need bodies. They need players that have starting experience. And I spoke to an evaluator today, said, what does Butler have left? He is 32 years old. He did just come off a year away from football. And what I was told was the 2020 tape of Malcolm Butler actually looked pretty good, which surprised me because I felt like the story on Butler was his 3 years in Tennessee was he was a pretty average corner. But I was told still twitchy, still good instincts, still pretty quick at that position. So if they can bring him in and he is still that guy, again, after a year away at 32 years old, that would help them. It's going to lead to all sorts of awkward and fun interactions in the press conferences, right? But they still need a body at this position, Greg.
Oh, there's no question. And, Malcolm's fine. I do think, some of his film was kind of rough that year. I do think he was caught in between a little bit in the scheme. And I think that in Tennessee, in that it quite didn't mesh with what he likes to do. I think the Patriots will, put him in a better position. But, I don't know, Trenni. I thought the Patriots already had the guy responsible for that interception in Matt Patricia. Already here.
Oh, that's right, because he designed the play and
exactly.
He went through it over practice, and that's why
they're back together again.
I mean, I'm going to guess, as Phil said, we'll have these fun little conversations, and he'll probably get asked questions about what happened. We're not finding out what actually happened.
Not a chance.
No
Look, he deserved to be benched down the stretch of that season. I'm sorry, I'm going to stick to that. And I wrote about it even before it happened, that it was trending that he was taking too many chances. It was the last year of his deal, trying to make plays. Kind of similar to J.C. Jackson towards the end last year. And when it came to the Eagles do a lot of things with read option and things like that, where they depend on the cornerback getting faked out. The Patriots demoted him. He didn't like it. That was the end of it. There wasn't a whole lot more to it than that.
But was he not a better option than Johnson Badamosi?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like
that is true.
I mean, a drop off from a starting level corner can still be worthwhile in terms of having him on the field. But I agree with Greg. We're not going to hear the full story on this.
Speaking of drop offs, how do you guys feel that the Patriots activity right now is like day 2 bargain bin, which has always kind of been their MO, Phil? But or is that just where, as Greg sort of alluded to, is this just where we are in the Patriots' longer term plan?
Well, we knew this was going to be the case before free agency even started. Talk to folks around the league. This was the expectation, was that they were not going to be making big splashes. They were not going to be in on the biggest names available the first week of free agency. So now maybe you start to get some of those bargain basement. We may even see some bigger names, quote, like if they end up getting, say, a Julio Jones, for instance, at a low rate deal with no risk and no guarantees. Like that's the kind of thing I think they'll be looking for to fill out their roster because they still need receiver help. They still need corner help, as we just mentioned. They still need help on the offensive line. So I don't think they're necessarily done, but it's going to be these small ripples in the pond, Greg.
They can build to the draft, Greg. That's great.
Yeah, a couple years down the road. I mean, I would have liked to have seen them thread the needle a little bit more. I mean, look, we know they spent a lot of money last year. But the year before, they did not spend very much money. And you thought everything sort of washed out and they'd be active, that, below the cap, I think they've spent about $35 million less than the cap. So you figured they'd do a little bit more, especially on the trade market, where you think that Bill could get, some guys for a couple years, cost effective, and, get the best play out of them. That still might happen, as Phil said. There are still some impact guys that can help this team out on the free agent market. And, who knows? They're waiting for the price tag to drop. I just like to see them be a little bit more strategic and go for a few more guys.
Trent Brown might end up being the biggest acquisition because that's an expensive position, and you bring him in, that might be your biggest splash.
Yeah, I'm with Greg. Oof.